Good morning and welcome back to another live stream. And this morning, a lot to talk about with the crypto crash. Dennis Porter joining us live. Dennis, great to have you here, man. And what a day to be talking about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Man, did you see this coming?
It's a wild market, man, that we live in. I would have to say that I did see somewhat of a downturn coming. Things seems like it's been pretty pre-programmed for some time now. Although this recent drop, a little bit of a fast one, definitely causing some concern, I'm sure, for those folks that are worried about the short term. But I always tell people, stay focused on the long term when it comes to the crypto markets.
Definitely, man. And, I've been watching you from afar, and I want to start just kind of with your background a little bit and how you got into crypto, how long you've been in crypto. Really enjoy when you're on Twitter Spaces, by the way, man. Always listening in from afar. So I'm going to pull up your Twitter page. Guys, if you don't follow Dennis on Twitter, you definitely should. It's at Dennis_Porter_. I'm going to pull that up right here. But Dennis, go ahead. Why don't you get started and just kind of tell everybody how you got started in crypto, man?
Yeah, 2017, had a little bit of free time on my hands. And so I was spending a lot of time researching various topics. And one of my buddies had told me that he had found this truly anonymous internet money. And I said, bullshit. And I went to go research it. And lo and behold, it isn't truly anonymous, but I was hooked. I really started to get attracted to the technology, started listening to guys like Andreas Antonopoulos, and immediately saw the value of Bitcoin as a technology to be able to bank the unbanked and be able to kind of break down a lot of the problems that we see in modern America and across the world that are caused by the corrupt and debased monetary system that we all kind of live in today. The more you can print trillions of dollars, right? A system that has all the special interests and big high net worth individuals and multinationals trying to get involved in our federal elections. I really thought that, this is something that could help break the barrier down and help to move us in the right direction with regards to trying to make sure that we're all living under a more fair and equal system.
Definitely. And a lot of people just stopping in. Make sure you guys hit that like button on your way in. Really appreciate that. Dennis is the CEO and co-founder of Satoshi Act Fund. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this and what the mission is here?
Yeah, Satoshi Action Fund is a 501c4 nonprofit. Basically, the premise of 501c4 nonprofit is to educate and kind of help push forward effective policy in this country. Anybody can open one of these, but the reason why I opened this one was to go on the offense for Bitcoin mining. We all know that Bitcoin mining is ruthlessly under attack all across the world, not just in the United States, in New York and in Washington, where they just raised the rate by 29%. But the Biden administration is very clearly going the wrong direction with regards to Bitcoin mining, not just from an energy perspective, but from this perspective of like, can we control this thing or can we not? And because of this, we've really gone on the defense with Bitcoin mining, right? So we are reacting to New York. We are reacting to the Biden administration. We are reacting to what's happening even in like China, and or what happened in China, the exodus. There's also an attempt to ban this in the European Union, to ban proof of work. And unfortunately, what that's done is it's made us so focused on being on the defense that we've forgotten to go on the offense for Bitcoin mining. So that is why I formed Satoshi Action Fund, because this is like an analogy that I like to tell. If you're standing around the goal the whole time, you're playing a game of soccer, you're all standing around the goal trying to defend it because you don't want your opponent to score any points on you, which is important. You want a strong defense. But if that's all you focus on, you're ultimately never going to score any points of your own, so you'll never win a single match. And so that's the purpose of Satoshi Action Fund. We're going to go on the offense for Bitcoin miners. We are going to go educate policymakers, regulators, lawmakers, and then we are going to lobby for effective policy. And if we can't get that policy passed, that might be when we start getting involved in elections, trying to get people on our team in office. But today it's just purely let's educate. That's phase one. And we're looking to go kind of secure some low-hanging fruit, secure some low-hanging wins, right? That we know that are easy wins for this industry. Obviously, we have a targeted strategy, and I can get deeper into that with folks that are interested in supporting the organization or being involved with the organization. But we're really excited about the future in front of us. We know this is the mission that the organization needs to be on, and we can't wait to go fight for Bitcoin mining in the USA. I'm going to be at the Miners Summit here soon. I'm at Consensus right now, talking about it with a lot of folks, back-to-back meetings here. But then I'm going to go to Miners Summit here. I think it's the 15th and the 16th to share about it more. So hopefully, if anybody's in College Station, Texas, come see me. I'll be there for a few days.
That sounds great, man. I want to take the temperature from Consensus. I wasn't able to get out there. I was at Bitcoin Miami. I'm sure you were there too, but I want to come back to Consensus. But real quick on the mining front. So, I don't know a lot about mining, full disclosure. I mean, I'm definitely not an expert, but it looks like other states, some states like Texas and Florida are a lot more open to Bitcoin mining. And really Texas, right? From what I'm reading, they're really opening the doors to Bitcoin mining. What do you see on that front in terms of like the state to state level with Bitcoin mining in the US?
I'm really glad that you brought that up because going state by state is in fact the key strategy of this organization. So in DC, you know how it is. You got to have a lot of money, you got to have a lot of power to have an impact on the federal offices there. And then even then, there might be someone else that's a bigger power broker than you that pushes you around. Not that they don't like your issue, but there are just very, very big issues. All the biggest issues on the federal side happen in DC. They take place in DC. And I don't want to fight that game. That's a very defensive game at this point for Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. And also, there's a lot of great organizations there that are doing that fight. You've got the Digital Chamber, you've got the Blockchain Association, as well as several other recent like startup Bitcoin organizations that have gone to DC. They're so focused on that. I think that's great. That's not my mission. I'm going to be going state by state to do exactly what you're saying. Make more of the states in this country a lot like Texas and a lot less like New York. So we want to go around and help states develop demand response incentive programs, as well as there are many other programs that ERCOT offers. ERCOT is the shorthand for the Texas grid. It is an entirely deregulated grid. It's one of a kind in the entire country. They offer 26 different programs for not just Bitcoin miners, but anybody to help get better, more competitive rates if they're willing to take part in these programs. The one I mentioned before, the demand response incentive program, I'll just briefly explain that. The premise is this: if you're willing to shut down in order to return power back to the grid, so that if there's a storm or there's a period where just particular high demand and the grid is suffering, right? The amount of available electricity is too low, and it's going to start to cause end use customers like residential customers to shut down. This happened recently, like it was about a year or two ago. Big storm came through Texas, ended up freezing all of the pipelines the water lines because of the electricity went down and there was no heat. And in fact, a few hundred people died from that event because it was so cold here in Texas. So what will happen in the future is Bitcoin miners will partake in the demand response incentive program, which means the state of Texas will give them a better rate if they're willing to shut down in times of great need. And they've already done this. They've done this many times. They do it all the time, in fact. They shut down regularly now for the state of Texas to help supply energy back during important moments. They get a better rate, and this is good. It's good for Bitcoin miners. They get a better rate. It's good for the state of Texas. And in the long run, what I want to do here really for Bitcoin miners is get them so integral to the grid that they can't be removed. And that's what's happening in Texas. They're becoming an integral part of the grid here. And I want to make sure and expand that across the entire country. Doing demand response incentive programs in other states is just one of the key goals for the organization. One key goal for Satoshi Action Fund.
Really appreciate what you're doing, man, to help drive this narrative. And, I want to go back to one of the things that, we see a lot in the popular press. It's the environmental impact of Bitcoin mining.
Right.
And that whole, a lot of different opinions around that. What's your opinion on that? And what are your thoughts on what you see from the popular press and how they talk about that?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that we are even having the conversation with regards to energy consumption. I mean, look at the gold industry, the way that they dig up the earth and the carbon that they emit. It's at least 4 times more than the Bitcoin mining industry. Look at the lithium batteries that we're digging up out of the ground. I mean, you have to dig up hundreds of thousands of pounds of earth just to get enough minerals to supply one electric car, and that has a devastating impact on the environment. So for me, it's very exaggerated, as your audience so rightly points out. The Bitcoin mining industry, for one, not does it not use very much energy, but as I stated, it is a positive impact on the grid and can be a positive driving force to bringing more ROI for renewable energy assets. And I'll explain that in short. The biggest problem today with renewables is that they're an intermittent generator of power, which means that they're not always on. So the wind is not always blowing, the sun is not always blowing, and sometimes there's a lot of wind and there's a lot of sun, and nobody needs that power. So the grid either has to curtail it, or they have to go to other sources of energy like coal and gas to be able to get the energy they need when wind and solar is not active, right? So there's two things going on here that are good. One is that, like I said, when the wind and solar is not blowing, Bitcoin miners can wind down. They can give the power back to the grid. So people don't have to go do coal and gas. But also, when there's way too much freaking energy, like you got raging sun, right? You're in the middle of Texas. There's a lot of sun here. There's a lot of solar power here, and almost a very large majority of that electricity just gets buried into the ground because nobody's there to buy it. Way too much generation occurring. Bitcoin miners can come in and they can soak up all that excess load, and that's good because it's going to help monetize that, and it's going to bring more taxes to the state of Texas, going to create more jobs, but it also delivers more ROI, return on investment, for these renewable energy assets. And so if you care about the environment, maybe you don't, I know this is a very divisive topic, but if you care about the environment and you care about emissions in particular, you should love Bitcoin mining, because Bitcoin mining is going to drive more incentives for folks to build renewable energy assets in this country. I talk to climate researchers and climate activists, and they say we need 10 times more renewable energy assets here. And there's just no government program that's going to help us get there quickly enough. And that's why they're starting to turn to Bitcoin mining and see it as this true market incentive to drive the build out of renewable energy assets in this country. So going back to that point, it's like, not only is it a misconception, it's very much the opposite direction. So it's not just that it's not bad for the environment, it's incredibly beneficial to the build out of these renewable energy assets, which if you care about how much carbon we are emitting, you should love Bitcoin mining.
So my next question is, how do we get this across to regulators, right? And it looks like you've spoke with Cynthia Loomis there just a few days ago. I'm sure you had these conversations. How did that go? And what are they saying? And what are they thinking?
Fortunately for the conversation with Cynthia Loomis, it's Lummis like hummus. That's
Lummis.
a good way to
Okay.
remember it.
I always screw that up.
Yeah, Lummis like hummus. There we go. You always remember now. You see, you got me actually. You said it the other
Lummis
way.
like hummus. Yeah. Now it's
Lummis
locked
like
in.
hummus. The incredible senator from Wyoming doesn't need any education with regards to the Bitcoin mining energy use consumption problem or concern, I should say. She is very forward on this issue. Not something I typically or have even needed to discuss with her. We are having conversations though with policymakers and regulators all across the country. I was already doing that on my own. Like I was having calls with members of Congress, state lawmakers, and regulators on the benefits of Bitcoin mining. And I just realized, you know what? I need to ramp this effort up significantly. That's why I started Satoshi Action Fund, so that I could give anyone who was interested, because anybody can contribute to this organization. And I think everybody should, if you're interested in protecting the crypto space, because Bitcoin is the shield around the entire industry, and proof of work is the security system for that shield. So if you're interested in protecting Bitcoin and the crypto space broadly, would love for people to contribute. People could also volunteer. You can go to satoshiaction.io to do that. But what we're going to be doing is significantly ramping up the effort to go talk to regulators and policymakers to get them on board with what's going on with regards to the Bitcoin mining energy conversation. And so far we're having a great time with it, right? I rarely run into anybody that doesn't understand the importance of Bitcoin mining and the driver that it can be for renewable energy assets, and the driver that it can be to revolutionizing the way that we manage our grid through programs like the Demand Response Incentive Program. It's very quickly like, oh, this makes sense. And then they turn around and they're like, how do I bring this to my state? And that's where the other phase 2 part of Satoshi Action Fund. Like I said, we're going to be educating. That's what we're primarily focused on. That's the biggest goal for our organization going forward. Every dollar that comes in goes towards educating these policymakers and elected officials and regulators. Phase 2 will be to take model legislation and to hand it to these policymakers and regulators and say, listen, if you want to attract this nascent tech infrastructure to your home state, then this is some great policy that you can pass. And this is some policy that will attract them, because not only will they like that you're reducing their cost of doing business, you're helping them be a healthy player in your state. This is not just them coming in and getting a tax break and leeching off the system. Bitcoin miners can come in and be a collaborative partner in states all across the country. And it doesn't matter if I want it to be 100% renewable, or I don't care about renewables at all. These programs they're neutral. They're tech neutral when it comes to this conversation. So they help for states that are guiding their entire energy industry towards renewables and towards green energy. And they help in states where they're just obviously pro energy. They're not concerned as much about the renewable energy conversation, but they do see the importance of it, but it's not their key focus. So I'm going to be really excited to be getting not only these policymakers, regulators, and elected officials across the country, state by state, educated on this issue. But the thing I'm most excited about is coming back around and having the conversations about how we attract Bitcoin miners. And there's two things here again too. So the one was they'll be happy because they can get a better cost of doing business and also do it in a collaborative way. Another one is that they just want to feel like they are seen in a good light. And what I mean by that is, going back to the beginning of the conversation, Bitcoin miners are under attack all across the world. China kicked them out. The European Union wants to kick them out. New York wants to kick them out. Washington kicking them out. It's getting a little like, hey guys, like we're good actors here. We're good people. Like why are you being so aggressive towards us? There are plenty of industries out there. Why are we being targeted when we're bringing jobs, investment, innovation, and also driving the conversation towards the energy transition? Why doesn't anyone understand that we are someone that can come in and be a collaborative partner? So just by trying to pass this legislation, because passing legislation is hard. So it's like some of these states might not be able to get it done, but just by trying and showing and signaling like, hey, we're here. We want Bitcoin miners to come to our state. We like Bitcoin mining. We see it as a valuable thing. That will signal to these miners, okay, hey, the political environment in this state is very friendly to miners. Let's go there. They look like they're going to be a long-term partner, can work alongside in this space. I was talking to Lee Bratcher from the Texas Blockchain Council, great organization here in Texas, doing a lot of great work for the state of Texas and to attract not only mining, but the crypto industry broadly to the state here. And I asked him in an interview, I said, what is the thing that really over the last year has had the most positive impact on attracting Bitcoin miners to your state? And that's what he said. He said that. He was like, oh, it's just that we are open and ready to do business. And now there's a community of miners here, and they're all like, come to Texas. It's great here, right? They love Bitcoin miners. So I'm really excited about the potential future. I do want to go after some low-hanging fruit states where they're just already ready to pass some of this stuff. Yep. But I'm also hoping to get some of those middle states. New York is a little lost right now. Maybe we can get them in a few years, but there are some states that are kind of more in the middle, like California, for instance, where they might be a little too concerned about the energy conversation with regards to energy consumption. I think that we can break down those barriers and start to bring them Bitcoin miners into these states. I mean, California, dude, you wouldn't believe how much solar energy this state wastes. It's incredible. So California, if you're listening, let's monetize that wasted and stranded energy. Let's turn it into Bitcoin. I know you guys like to raise taxes over there so you can spend more money, right? Like every good politician, you always want some more money to spend. I get that. I would want to do the same thing if I was a elected official, have an extra budget to move around with. But you can do it in a way where you're not having to raise taxes, and you can on your people there in the state of California. You can attract this new nascent tech infrastructure to your state, bring more jobs, more investment, innovation. So really excited again, to just be having these conversations all across the country.
I'm curious. You mentioned some low-hanging fruit. What are some of those states? I'm curious. And then there's some good questions in the chat. I'll jump to you guys in just a sec. But what are some of those low-hanging fruit states?
Yeah, there are some states that are low-hanging fruit. There are states that publicly elect their utility commissioners, and we as a corporation, as a nonprofit, we want to go after these low-hanging fruit states because I think it's important that Bitcoin miners start to get some victories, just get some wins under the table. There's a big giant battlefield, right? Over here, you've got New York, You've got the Biden administration. They are trying to come down on Bitcoin mining. And a lot of us are going over there, having that battle, or fighting back, making sure that they can't advance this direction, right? Let's imagine this entire screen is one giant battlefield. It's all 50 states. It's the whole country. They're trying to advance this way. We're defending, trying to push them back. Well, we don't have anybody over here going on offense, pushing our side forward on the battlefield. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to go towards these low-hanging fruit states where they publicly elect their utility commissioners, states like Montana, states like the Dakotas. You also have some of the states down in the South as well. And the reason for that is because if we go in and we educate these policymakers and regulators and they're on board, that's great. But if they're not, this gives us an avenue to get involved in elections in a way where we can have a positive impact in getting people into those states to be able to push forward this important, very important legislation and policy to be able to track this Bitcoin mining industry to their state. So publicly elected utility commissioners only in 10 states. And that's key, like I said, because if we can do that, if we can get into those states where they're publicly elected, we can try to push the conversation forward. If they're not on board, then we can start having the dialogue, which could be phase 3, the dialogue around potentially unseating some of these utility commissioners in order to get people in there that are, and this is not like a, we hate you, utility commissioners, we're going to take you out. But this is the future. If you want to have a better state with a better grid and more energy coming your way with more jobs and more investment, more innovation, we strongly believe that you should head this direction. And the people in those states oftentimes agree. So if these utility commissioners don't want to have that conversation, we'll have the conversation with someone else. It's just simple as that. You got to have people that are going to represent you in office. And fortunately, there are 10 states that publicly elect their utility commissioners, because there's almost all the other states, they're appointed by the governor. And getting involved in a governor's race, trying to unseat a governor, is a little difficult, that's for sure.
We're joined by Dennis Porter this morning. Well over 300 people hanging out with us. Thank you all so much for being here. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Let's push this out. I know a lot of people want to learn about this and gain some knowledge this morning. So push this out into the old YouTube algorithm. That'd be much appreciated. Dennis, we got a good question here from Brian. Why not focus on nuclear energy development over renewable for Bitcoin mining?
That's an excellent question coming from Brian, and I'm glad that he brought it up. I think that we are living in ancient history with regards to nuclear power. Our country, and I've tweeted it out, needs to get over the fear and start pushing back towards nuclear. I personally believe that nuclear is the way. There's not very many base load generations out there, forms of generation out there. And briefly, for those that might not know, base load is the opposite of intermittent load. And the intermittent load is the renewables, like only on sometimes. Base load can be on all day long, 24/7, 365. And the competitors to nuclear, which nuclear is one, is coal and gas. So it's a perfect question, right? Because if you're concerned about renewables, if you're concerned about making sure you drive towards a low carbon future, like nuclear is by far the best power generation asset to be able to head that direction. So it's a perfect question. I think that not only is nuclear, has it been the way for a long time, but there's been advancements in nuclear, small modular reactors, as well as like cleaner ways of doing it. And there's a lot of conversations about being able to recycle the fuel. So once you have these spent fuel rods, you can reuse them. And then, another conversation we need to be having is like, why are we, when the nuclear fuel is spent, right? Like, cause that's the worst part. Nobody wants the fuel like stored where they're living. I'm like, why aren't we talking to Elon Musk and figuring out a way to shoot this stuff into space? Because I think that would be a much better solution with regards to how we can eliminate the nuclear waste on our planet and still be headed in the right direction. But I totally agree. I think nuclear is the future. It's by far one of the best energy assets that you could possibly make. The biggest problem really is regulatory. So I don't know how long it's been, years though, since we've approved a nuclear power plant in this country. It's a very difficult regulatory process, regulatory regime in order to get approved. And not only are we not approving them, we're tearing them down across the world. So, Germany, for instance, I think just shut down 2 nuclear plants. It's very sad to see. It's obvious that we need to go this direction when it comes to energy creation. Unfortunately, you have 2 battles that nuclear is fighting. Nuclear is fighting against the competitors of baseload, which is coal and gas. The coal and gas industry do not like nuclear. It's a very aggressive competitor to their business model. And also you have environmentalists who from the 70s who are still very, very, very concerned about the potential for some sort of meltdown and the spent fuel rods. Unfortunately, it's like you kind of have to start breaking past that. If you're an environmentalist, if you care about the climate and you're willing to do whatever it takes to be able to fix that, I think you should be able to look past what's going on with nuclear for two reasons. One, because you're trying to save the planet, you got to do whatever it takes. But also, we've had decades and decades of safety protocols and decades of safe use of nuclear in this country, and particularly in our nuclear subs and our nuclear aircraft carriers. Zero incidents that we are aware of. So nuclear has become safer than ever. And hopefully we as a country can get back to using it.
That's great stuff. John Baker says, I'm from Cali. How can we help? Just curious. This state is a hard sell on anything and everything.
Yeah, well, we're fortunate that this is a nascent tech infrastructure that can go anywhere it wants. You don't have to be near a population center. You don't have to be on a coast. You can just go wherever the energy is at, and energy can be created anywhere, especially now because the Bitcoin miners can come soak up the energy no matter where it is. I think that California has an opportunity. I was meeting with the California State Attorney General. I've also heard conversations from people that are close to the administration there in the governor's office who are saying that they're ready to go in the right direction. We saw very much so with the executive order that they put out, that they were looking to be going in the right direction. Fortunately, seemingly the opposite direction of New York. So I'm glad we don't have California and New York trying to ban Bitcoin or Bitcoin mining. So very positive thing coming from California. I think that they could head the right direction. They love tech. They have a lot of solar energy. All you got to do is start saying, hey, come buy up this energy that we already create, and you can have it at a fair rate. Don't even need to give it away for free. Don't need to give it away for below what the Bitcoin miners need to have to be profitable. I think that California has a real opportunity here, and I'm looking forward to them moving in the right direction.
I want to come back to Bitcoin a little bit, because the big question, of course, myself as a YouTuber, the big question is, should I buy? Right? When should I buy? When should I sell? What's your philosophy on Bitcoin right now? Or are you a dollar cost average investor right now, or are you buying all the time? What's your philosophy on how you invest in Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's difficult, right? Because you have this time where it's kind of glaringly obvious that Bitcoin is going to go down, or it could go down more. I had said to a friend yesterday, I was like, if we take another leg down, which we have, I'm feeling pretty confident about like these levels that we're at to start buying here. Now, that's not financial advice, and everybody needs to make their own assessments. But in 2017, I was buying all the way up to the top, and I just held. So it's worst case scenario. This you should really be viewing this as a long-term investment play. Do not try to look at Bitcoin as a quick win. If you're in the middle of a bull market, maybe you could try to make that play. You could try to swing trade on the way up, or I know there's people that swing traded on the way down, but if you just like buy and get in and get out and make some profit, like this is not the time to be doing that. But these prices are very, very good prices. We are getting down close to the 2017 historical high. And so if you're looking to buy Bitcoin right now, definitely a great place to start buying. I wouldn't say, go get a second mortgage on your house at this point, although I know a lot of people are interested in doing that and are trying to find ways to buy Bitcoin. The only reason I would say that is because, these prices typically would encourage me to be very aggressive buyer of Bitcoin, but you do have to be careful. And I am, but you have to be careful on an individual basis when you're looking at down the barrel of also heading into a deep, deep recession, potentially a depression that'll be marked by stagflation. Stagflation is when you have high unemployment and high inflation. It's a very dangerous economic zone to be in. It's only ever happened once in this country before, notably in the 70s. And that is a period where you're going to want to probably have some dollar access. And so that's why I say, just be careful. Don't be YOLOing into really anything right now. You do want to have some dollars available, even though, unfortunately, in a high inflation environment, those dollars will be losing purchasing power. But it's in that environment, in a stagflation environment, it'll be difficult to get any dollars, right? So
good point.
Just be careful. If you're not employed, be careful if you think that your job might be at risk in that type of an environment. You don't want to go get a second mortgage and then you lose your job and then you can't pay your mortgage payments. And then all of a sudden, not only are you losing your Bitcoin, but you're losing your house, right? So I just tell people, be very cautious in this market. We are headed towards a very dangerous economic time. If you can, every paycheck still continue to DCA. I think that's an appropriate and responsible way to approach Bitcoin and Bitcoin purchases. Obviously, I'm a Bitcoin only guy. That doesn't mean I'm anti. I don't hate all the other stuff out there, but I tend to tell people, especially because of the dangerous environment that we are in, like, buy Bitcoin. I call it the safe haven asset of the crypto space, because when you wake up tomorrow, you know that it's going to be there. Unfortunately, we saw what happened with Luna, UST. I mean, that was a top 10 coin. So just be very careful, be very cautious. I would say buy Bitcoin. I would avoid other projects at this point, especially if you already have some of your assets in other projects, and maybe consider rolling out of those more risky assets and into Bitcoin, the safe haven of the crypto space.
That's great stuff. Great advice too. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now with Bitcoin, dollar cost averaging, but I'm also trying to keep and build a cash position too with, recession fears and what have you. You mentioned the Luna case. I love getting other people's opinions on that. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, you could take that any direction you want. I mean, what kind of, now that we've kind of let the dust settle a little bit and there's still more information kind of coming out with Quan and what have you. I've been covering that a little bit on the channel. What are your thoughts about it all? What does it mean for us as an industry moving forward?
Yeah, it's tough. A lot of people lost a lot of money. There was an incredible amount of confidence in Luna and UST, but I think it just really shows us that it's very difficult to know what is going to survive in this marketplace. So people need to be very, very careful when they're allocating. And that's why I consistently tell people to allocate just to Bitcoin. If you want to get involved in the broader crypto space and you really believe in these other projects, like, I'm not going to tell you not to buy them, but just realize that Bitcoin is the only thing that has survived this entire time from the very beginning. And it is a very, very, very safe asset. And, sometimes people complain, they're like, oh, Bitcoin moves so slow, it just doesn't update. Well, this is kind of the reason, this is an exact reason why Bitcoin moves slowly. Bitcoin space, we like to say that we have the opposite ethos as the tech industry. The tech industry says move fast and break things, and we say move slowly and break nothing. Like, it's kind of a first do no harm approach to crypto. And the reason that we do that is so we don't end up in these sorts of situations where the entire market collapses because there was a bug that we couldn't detect. And all of a sudden, people are able to start printing unlimited amounts of Bitcoin, which, like, was a bug. I think that was like a small bug that was detected like in the very, very, very beginning of Bitcoin's creation, and was quickly detected and rerouted. But today, if something like that were to happen, I think it would be devastating, not only to Bitcoin, but to the faith in the entire Bitcoin crypto space. And that's a very dangerous game to play. So that's why I say, if you want to buy something that's going to go up on average 200% per year, which Bitcoin does, that's quite a bit of a jump. I mean, go ask Warren Buffett; he'd be stoked to be making 200% per year. I think the guy makes like 30% per year, and people are like, and they like worship him for the way he trades. So
he's not getting those returns in Coca-Cola, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you guys want to get 200% per year, which is the average growth rate of Bitcoin, maybe a little bit less than that, and you don't want to have to wake up every morning wondering if all your assets have been gone to zero because they collapsed due to a unknown bug or someone, more or less like shorting it to zero. Like, I think that's a safe place to put your bet is in Bitcoin. That's why I do it, right? Because now I can own Bitcoin, I can hold Bitcoin, and then I can focus on my real life. I can focus on the real world. And the reason I say that is because I used to trade, right? I used to be very involved, but I was like staring at charts all day, and I was researching what's the next thing, what's this thing, and I was spending quite a large amount of time trying to figure out the market. Well, now I don't have to do any of that. I just buy Bitcoin, hold it in cold storage, and now I get to focus on other work. And that other work has led me to launching not only my show, which I have the breaking, which is I'm going to start here at 9:30 what are we CST? I'm normally on the West Coast.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll be we start at 7:30 a.m. PDT, 10:30 a.m. EST. So I had the time to launch that show, so that's coming on soon. Really excited about that. We basically just cover the news. We do the headlines, analysis, and the latest in the space. So that show is called Breaking. You can find it on YouTube. I also have a link there on my page. Yeah, there you found it for him. Thank you, appreciate that. And
Yep.
then also it gave me the time to be able to launch Satoshi Action Fund and to go on offense for Bitcoin miners and provide value back to the network. So if you get the opportunity to, you're tired of trading, you're tired of spending all this time watching charts and researching projects, buy Bitcoin, you'll grow your wealth, and you'll have time to focus on other important projects in your life. I started doing that about 4 or 5 years ago, and I haven't been disappointed since.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. When I went to Bitcoin Miami, because I'm relatively new to crypto, just probably about 2 years in, taking it seriously. And I noticed that at Bitcoin Miami that nobody's checking their phones. Nobody cares because they just buy it every single day. A lot of them are miners as well. So it's very passive versus, like you mentioned, that go, 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 always looking at the charts, have to trade, have to stay up, a lot of sleepless nights. So it's a good point. In terms of Bitcoin, though, do you see it as both transactional in the future and a store of value, or do you see it more as one or the other? I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, that was the conversation in 2017, the dominant one. Could Bitcoin be used to buy coffee? Was kind of the meme that people used. And we have proven that Bitcoin functionally can be used as a currency. So the way that works is, for those of you that don't know, you have Bitcoin, the base layer, which everyone says is slow, high transaction fees, 10-minute blocks. But now we have Lightning Network, which is built on top of the Bitcoin base layer. And what that does, the Lightning Network, is it allows you to spend your Bitcoin and nearly instant transactions for nearly free transaction fees. It's being used all over the world. Obviously, it's still a new project, but so far it's been working seamlessly. It's one of the most successful layer twos in the entire space, if not the most successful layer two in the entire space. And so now you can use Bitcoin functionally as a currency. You have the option to use it that way. Now, with regards to some of the other issues that are in front of us, which is the tax situation and also the accounting situation. What's happening here in the United States is we have to pay capital gains. So because of that, we have to track it all the time, constantly having to track all of our transactions. And so what I want to do is I want to get to a place where we can break down that tax and remove the overburdensome accounting situation so Bitcoin can be used as a currency. Because currently today, it's difficult to use it as a currency, but that's more because of the tax and accounting situation, not because of any sort of technological holdbacks.
Gotcha. I got to ask you this too, because I know a lot of my audience, they do dabble in other cryptocurrencies outside of Bitcoin. I know you said you only invest in Bitcoin, but do you see merit in any other cryptocurrencies?
I'm a big fan of stable coins. I think that those have a real use case, and we're definitely going to position us in a way where we can transition into the future, but also because it's good for the dollar, right? For the first time ever, now folks across the world have access to US dollar liquidity. And as you can see, right there, top in the top five, you've got two stable coins, right? Number 3 and number 4 position. And before Luna UST collapsed, believe UST was also in the top 10. So there's definitely a demand and a need for dollar liquidity and to be able to use stable coins. And so I'm a big believer in that technology. I think they serve a direct use case. It's not theoretical. People are using it all across the world, not only in the United States, but also in third world countries where it's important that people have stable currencies. So this is great because now you have not only a strengthening of the dollar is getting stronger because of the demand that is being created in these new markets. Now, for the first time ever, people in any country in the world where they have internet access can have access also to stable coins, which is good because, like I said, so many of these countries, they have stable currencies, and now they do have some form of stable currency. But it's also good if you are an American and you want the dollar to survive and you want the dollar to be strong moving into the future. And I think having a strong dollar is valuable, primarily because I want to make sure that we have a good transition. If we do inevitably end up in a world where it's Bitcoin and Bitcoin is the currency of the planet, I don't want that to be an unstable transition. I want it to be a smooth one. Eventually, every single reserve currency on this world fades away, right? So you've had reserve currency after reserve currency. They last in, typically no longer than 150 years or so. So we're heading towards that direction where the dollar, I think it's even like 100 years, where the dollar is kind of like getting towards a period where it's like, oh, is this the end of the dollar? Maybe, maybe not. I would hope that we can last a little longer and that we have a smooth transition to the next currency. And if it's a next currency, I would hope that it would be Bitcoin, a decentralized currency that isn't controlled by any one nation state.
You mentioned stablecoins. How do you see algorithmic stablecoins versus actually asset-backed stablecoins like USDC?
That's also important conversation to have. I like asset backed. I think that algorithmic is interesting, but unfortunately, as we've seen, it has some issues, and there needs to be more work done. And can it be solved? Can the problem be solved? Be something that survives? I don't know, but I do like asset backed stablecoins. I think that that's the right direction to go, and that's why I encourage people to use USDC and USDT. Be careful. I think we need to have disclosures around whether it's a stable coin or excuse me, whether it's an asset backed or whether it's an algorithmically ran stable coin. That's one thing. That's one type of smart regulation that we can have, right? It's like, just let people know. I think people got to be careful. I bet a lot of people that owned UST had no idea the difference between UST and USDT. So
Right.
I think it's important that we let investors know what they're holding. And I do like asset backed. I think that it's a little bit more, although centralized, I think that it's a little bit more, okay, this is something that I can trust and that is going to survive. I don't have to depend on an algorithm functioning properly. As we saw, UST and Luna got into a death spiral, and I would hate for that to happen again in this space. So I tell people be very cautious.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because this is USDD, also a top 100 crypto. This is Tron stablecoin, and it too is algorithmic, and it just got depegged pretty recently. There you go. There's the one day.
Wow.
So yeah, we're seeing this quite a bit, and even
when did that happen? Is that how long ago was
this
that?
is just today, and it was floating along nicely there. You can see the 1 month. There you go. It got depegged before too, but yeah, there are some scary things with the algorithmic stablecoins. The one that was really interesting with UST is like it was so needed for that whole thing to work. So like people were almost kind of forced into holding UST if they were bullish on Luna too. But I agree. I mean, USDC and to a lesser extent, maybe USDT. I mean, USDT's had its issues too, right? Tether. There's always been some interesting conversations around Tether. What are your thoughts on Tether? Is it really backed? I guess that's the big question, right?
Yeah, it's an important conversation to have. I think that USDT Tether has done a good job of delivering important information with regards to audits. I think they're doing a job of it. Maybe there was a time early on when the asset existed where it wasn't 100% backed, but from my understanding, USDT is safe to hold. I'm not, again, it's not investment advice. I don't hold USDT. I only hold Bitcoin. So the reason for that is because you are already just taking on extra risk when you hold these stable coins. They're an IOU and an IOU on an IOU. Like the dollar is an IOU, right? Especially when you hold it in a bank, and then now you're doing stable coins, which are an IOU on top of that IOU. So just people need to be cautious. Like this is not like holding dollars in your safe at home. It's completely different. And also there's nobody going to come in and save you if USDT collapses. So if you're just holding your Bitcoin, or excuse me, if you're holding value in a stable coin because you're like, oh, this is a great place to hold my values, it'll be fine to put it on an exchange, and I can just keep it there, keep it ready to buy Bitcoin, keep it ready to buy something if I need to. Just be cautious about that approach, especially as we enter this bear market. I think we're going to be entering a prolonged bear market potentially, or at least a very sideways market for some time. And the reason I say that is because we are in this big macro downtrend, and I don't see Bitcoin like zooming up out of this thing. I've been saying for some time now on my show and on my Twitter, I think that we could be headed sideways or down for a while. So people just need to be careful, be cautious, be very careful about holding stable coins, because when the tide goes out, right now the tide is going out, we're going to see who was covered who is covered. Some people like to say swimming naked, right? If you're swimming naked, which some people might be, they're not covered. They don't have all their assets in place to cover the withdrawals. Although we have seen USDT doing that, not saying that they're going to not have the assets to cover their withdrawals. But if there is some sort of bank run style event, I just tell people be careful out there. And I would personally try to hold my money in Bitcoin, in cold storage, get everything you can off of exchanges, and be careful about holding it in any of these stable coins long term, because we don't really know. Some people feel fine with that. I'm not saying this is not an alarmist. I'm not being alarmist at all. I think that USDT has done a great job and they're doing good audits. Just be careful out there is all I got to say.
A good friend of mine, after the whole Terra situation happened, he said, well, I think we just learned the best stable coin out there is Bitcoin. It's kind of true, right? So there's a question up on screen. Would it be a big reset for the economy and our national debt if you just went digital and used crypto and the digital dollar as the national currency? This has been in the conversation for a while. What do you think about this, a digital dollar?
So if we're talking CBDCs, which I'm assuming is what is being asked here, and it's a common question that I get. I don't like CBDCs for retail use. However, I do like them for wholesale use. And that means, banks want to use them as a new SWIFT system, as a new cross-border payment system between centralized entities or institutions. I think that's a great way to use CBDCs. It's a perfectly rational way to use them. And most of the people that I know that are having a part of this conversation that are talking about CBDCs, they understand the difference. They understand the difference between wholesale and retail. So retail, I don't like CBDCs for retail use. I think they'll be used as an intrusive on people's privacy. People will not have any privacy with regards to the federal government being able to spy on their transactions. But I also don't like it because CBDCs give incredible power to the person that controls it. And so if the Fed and the banks are controlling CBDCs, they can use those to tell you where and when and how you can spend your money, because it's like centralized programmable money, right? Because Bitcoin and crypto broadly is programmable money, but it's decentralized. So nobody can tell you where to spend your money. They can't just redesign it and say, oh, well, you can only shop at Amazon because they're in political alignment with the banks, or we have a backdoor deal with them where every time you shop at Amazon, you get % off. But if you want to shop over here with this person that we don't like, it's 2% more expensive. Mm-hmm. So that is the danger with CBDCs, is they can be used to control how, when, and where you spend your money. I don't like them for retail use. I think they're great for wholesale. I think they're great for interbank commerce, but I'll leave it at that.
So Daniel's got a question, and Daniel's one of my private community members. Big Cardano guy, by the way, very smart, but he's into all different types of crypto. He says to Dennis, can you think of any example in history where the first iteration of an innovative protocol or technology was the one which ended up being widely adopted? Which I think he's referring to Bitcoin. Any thoughts on this?
I mean, you also have the internet, right? So the internet is a protocol stack, and I very much see Bitcoin like the internet of money. And what by that is you're going to have protocols that stack on top of each other, different layers. So far, we've seen that has happened with the internet. You have the base layer of the internet, and then you have TCP/IP built on top of that. Same thing is going to happen with Bitcoin, and it already has happened. You've seen Bitcoin as a base layer, and then you also have Lightning, which has been the adoption of a second layer on top of Bitcoin that enables for quick and seamless payments anywhere in the world. Now, I think another question here really is, can Bitcoin be the protocol to end all protocols, and can it be the protocol to do smart contracts and transact NFTs and all the other things that people are interested in doing in this space? I don't know. I have yet to be seen, right? TBD. Someone would have to come up with an engineering breakthrough in order to accomplish this, but someone did come up with an engineering breakthrough in order to enable Lightning. So we've done this before. We've had engineering breakthroughs with Bitcoin that have enabled layer 2s. Could there be a layer 3 that also allows us to do smart contracts and NFTs on Bitcoin? I'm not saying that there will be. There's no way to know that for sure, but that's kind of what I think could happen. And that could be the thing that I think really surprises a lot of people in this space, if we are able to have some sort of layer 3 situation that does enable NFTs and smart contracts on Bitcoin, because that would eliminate the use case of quite a large amount of the crypto space. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but something for people to be watching out for, that Bitcoin could be a protocol that covers a wide variety of use cases, even ones that it's not able to be used for today. And real quick comment too, though, just going back to the first one, what was the question? It was like the first protocol.
There you go.
History, first iteration. Okay, so Bitcoin is also not the first iteration. There were other cryptos and attempts at crypto before Bitcoin, and they failed. So Bitcoin is the first iteration, and it's just the best iteration in my opinion. It's the most successful. It's the most decentralized. So be curious to see how it continues to play out. It's not the first iteration here, but also it could end up being the one iteration that we really truly need for most of the use cases in the space.
Hanging out with Dennis Porter this morning, man. I really appreciate your time. You got another like 5-10 minutes? Is that cool?
Yeah, I got 5 minutes. I got it.
Okay, 5 minutes, and then we're out. Hopefully, you come back on, man. Really enjoyed the conversation this morning. So, yeah, we've talked about a few things that you've accomplished and what you're working on right now. I do want to come back to that consensus question. What was the overall temperature like there?
Consensus is great. I think it's a little more business here this year than like Miami. Miami's very much like a party and a festival.
Yep.
Most folks were turning in early. There was 1 or 2 nights where people were staying out late, but the temperature is fine. It kind of remind me of, 2018 when the bear market had not really settled in yet. Like it had kind of dropped down, but there was still this lingering positive atmosphere with regards to where we were price wise. I would have to say if consensus happened a week from now, that's if it instead of today, this last week in front of it behind us, there could have been a little bit more of a somber mood in the crowd, especially with the way that Bitcoin has been dropping just this morning and earlier and late last night. So mood was generally fine. People were positive. People were feeling good, and adoption is continuing. I think the big difference between 2017 drop and this one is that the adoption is increasing despite the fact that the price is dropping. And I see that not just in the tech space, I see it particularly in the political arena. We see that, Lummis and Gillibrand have introduced this bill. We see that we are moving in the right direction with regards to Bitcoin mining in some of these states. And policymakers, like on an individual basis, the conversations I'm having, policymakers are wanting to attract this nascent tech infrastructure to their state. And the reason I think that's different is because last time was the first time people really became publicly aware of Bitcoin. So once it dropped, they're like, oh, this thing's just a bubble. It's like, we can just forget about it. But now it's raged back, it's come back. And so it's kind of broken down that psychological barrier that, oh, this thing is just a bubble. Like it's just going to go away. People are saying like, oh, this is just what happens. This is what Bitcoin does. Also, for the first time ever, we're experiencing Bitcoin in a downturn in the middle of a macroeconomic downturn. So it's very easy when someone says, oh, why is Bitcoin going down? It's like, you don't need anything more of an excuse than, well, why is everything going down? Like the whole economy is going down. So I think that we're going to be fine. People might be a little disappointed with the price. Personally, I love when Bitcoin gets cheap. I hope it goes down even more. I hate to say that to your audience, but I love to buy Bitcoin. So I'm really hoping we can get some cheap Bitcoin here, and then we can all enjoy the gains on the other side of all this.
Really enjoyed your time, man. Final question, just a quick one, just a fun one. Bitcoin prediction by 2030. Go.
I'm very much in the camp of Bitcoin is going to go to $1 million. I don't know if it's by 2030, but I think that's where we're headed inevitably. When you look at all of the value in the world and you consider that Bitcoin will probably be the reserve asset at bare minimum within the next 5 to 10 years, I typically am in the camp that Bitcoin will go to $1 million. I'm pretty hyper bullish on Bitcoin though, just because of a deep understanding that I have of this technology and where I think that it's going to go. And if we hit $1 million by 2030, I won't be surprised, but definitely won't be disappointed if we're only at 250.
Yeah, gold's like a $10 trillion market cap. Bitcoin's coming, right?
Yeah, 10x. Yeah, exactly. Well, we're almost like 20x.
Yeah,
the market cap of gold right now. If we match gold, we would be 20xing the Bitcoin price.
But Bitcoin,
and I think gold's on the way out for sure. So
yeah, Bitcoin will move a little quicker once we get in a bull run too than gold, I think, right?
That's absolutely true. Absolutely.
Hey, man, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And we'll keep in touch. And thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on and letting me talk about Satoshi Action Fund. really important organization that I'm going to be working really hard on. And so I'm always grateful for the opportunities to come on and talk about it.
Take care, man. Have a good one. All right, guys, that was Dennis Porter joining us live this morning. Really appreciate him coming on, and wow, that was really fun. A lot of fun there this morning. So hopefully you got some value out of that. We are going to hang out here for just a little bit longer here, probably about 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes or so, and we'll just close up shop a little bit. So real quick, there was a question up here. Luke had a really good question here. How long do recessions typically last until we say we can actually be in a bull market again? It's a really good question, Luke. So I actually just did a video on this, but historically speaking, recessions last for about 11 months. Okay. Now, what comes after recessions are about a decade of growth on average. Okay. All we have to go off of is history. Now, does history always repeat itself? No. But we can look at, that and say, okay, well, historically speaking, this is kind of what happens. So if you want to learn more a little bit about that, I had this video right here. Recession is here. Recession 2022 is here. Get ready. You could check out that video right there, and we kind of dive into that. But yeah, on average, about 11 months, man, for recessions on average. And then the thing is, once we get through those tough times, usually we see big time growth in the economy afterwards, right? So usually around 10 years or so of growth, at least historically speaking. So, man, really enjoyed the great conversation this morning. Paul, thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, I mean, Dennis is 100% a Bitcoin maxi, and that's okay. I mean, we should have conversations with people who have different opinions than us. That's how we learn. If I brought on somebody that aligned with every single one of my viewpoints and had the same pre-existing attitudes and beliefs as I did every single time, that wouldn't be good conversation. That wouldn't be learning. That wouldn't be the mantra of constant growth, which is up on the banner of the YouTube channel, right? So I enjoyed talking to Dennis a lot, and I enjoy other cryptocurrencies outside of Bitcoin. I think there is merit to other cryptos, and it's okay if somebody has a differing opinion. It's totally cool, and we need to have the conversation, because at the end of the day, we're all here to drive crypto, the crypto market forward, right? Whether that's, people believe that's just Bitcoin. People believe that's Bitcoin and Ethereum. Some people believe it's multiple cryptocurrencies that will be here in the end. Regardless, we are helping drive this thing forward, and that's the most important. And really enjoyed talking to Dennis. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation as well. Mohammed said, what tokens do you guys encourage us to DCA in? Mohammed, personally, what I'm doing is I'm DCAing into Bitcoin and Ethereum. So that's the only thing I'm DCAing in right now. But I'm also adding to some of my other top cryptocurrencies that I really like. So I just bought a few. I want to save those for the private community members that, I mentioned those to them. But if you want to join the private community, link down below in the description. That is totally up to you. It's $20 per month. You can cancel at any time. But again, thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you, Dennis, for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for listening here. And I'm going to have a bunch of videos coming out very, very soon. And yeah, have a great one. And we'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.